Welcome to the Homeschool Show from North Carolinians for Home Education. Our goal is to help you homeschool with confidence and joy. I'm your host, Matthew McDill, and we have a very special co-host today, Mark Sanger. Welcome to your studio.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Mark is the owner of WSIC News Talk, and we are so glad that he lets us be on the show. I mean, you let the show be on your station, actually.
Yes. We're glad you guys are here, too.
Yeah.
It's been fun seeing all the different guests and hearing everything and learning more.
And you're a homeschool dad.
We're a homeschool, and my wife does it all, of course. But
so you have nothing to say.
That's right. That's right. And, but it's so refreshing to hear all the good information you're bringing every week.
Yeah.
So thanks for doing it.
Well, thanks for
really great resource.
Jumping in. Tell us what's on the show today.
Yeah, today we're going to be talking with Teresa Otton. She's an early childhood specialist, author, and speaker. So welcome to Teresa. She's here in the studio with us. Also, homeschool news coming up here in a little bit. We look at some of the new homeschool statistics from the Associated Press as reported in the Morning Newswire podcast. And also we'll look at watch the trailer of Kirk Cameron's new movie. It's a documentary. It's called The Homeschool Awakening.
That's right.
It's going to be exciting to see that.
Yep. All right, we'll look forward to that. And for Homeschool Conversations, just want to introduce and welcome Teresa Otton. She's an early childhood specialist with a bachelor's in science and early childhood development, with over 20 years of experience as a Christian educator, focusing on children and youth ministry. Teresa has spent a great deal of time with families as they work to create homes where all thrive and love. Teresa and her husband, Rick, a United Methodist minister, live in Denver, North Carolina. Teresa enjoys doing science experiments with her grandchildren and making music for the Lord. Welcome to the studio, Teresa.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I'm wondering, with the science experiments and things like that, if you kind of had some homeschool experience there somewhere.
I do, actually. I was very early committed to homeschooling my children. Mm-hmm. In 1989, our homeschool opened, and we began, and that year there were 1,500 homeschooling families in the entire state,
wow.
In the whole state. So I'm so excited to see how much homeschooling has grown and how homeschoolers thrive, and their families are just doing so well. It was a wonderful experience for us. And so it was just me and 1,499 other weirdos
right.
back in the day. But
That's right.
now the weirdos have grown, and I love it. It's wonderful.
That's great.
Mm.
And so we wanted to know about some of the experiences helping other parents and things. And what are some of the most common parenting struggles that you've seen over the year, things you've run into?
Over and over, yes.
Yes.
Because, all families have a lot of commonalities. The specifics may change and shift over time, but in general, what most families really want to do is calm the chaos and have genuine unity. They want to be one whole family. We all have this image in our minds of the families that we long for, and we have since we were young, most of us. Mm-hmm. And yet, family life is real. And sometimes we lose sight of how to make that happen. We know what we want. We just don't always know how to get there.
So let me follow up with that.
Uh-huh.
When you think about what parents envision ahead of time, you mentioned calmness, or calming the chaos. What do you think, what are some of the other things parents ahead of time are thinking, this is what I want it to look like?
They all want it to be, for example, a calm mealtime where we all eat around the table and
sure.
the children are playing in the yard or with their toys, and maybe we take them to dancing lessons. And what they really want, they don't envision perhaps a bedtime meltdown or you put broccoli on my fettuccine Alfredo meltdown.
Yeah, for sure.
That's it. They don't, and so often that catches parents off guard. I don't know how to deal with this.
Right.
So but there are great positive ways to making your home a calm haven in this great ocean of chaos in the world. It can be done.
So I guess that's what this book is for.
That is what my
So I have
book
in
is
my hands
about.
right here, Teresa Otton, Harbor Home. Harbor Home. Create a home where you and your children can thrive. Tell us a little bit about this.
Well, the book is laid out so that each chapter coincides with an element of what it takes to make a harbor work. My husband and I are great boaters. We are often at the Outer Banks, and one day I was sitting eating a snow cone, because that's what you do, on Ocracoke Island, and I was looking around and praying for some families back home that I was concerned about. And I looked and saw how the local community works together so beautifully. Everyone knows what they're supposed to do. Everyone knows what it takes to achieve the goal. And I thought to myself, if only families could work together like this harbor works, then they could have a harbor home.
Okay.
Well,
nice.
And I love a good metaphor. I just do. And
So you turned the whole thing into a book.
So the whole metaphor is now a 50,000-word book. So, which was great fun to write. And each chapter coincides with an element of a harbor, and then we connect that to a relatable element of living together in a unified family, where chaos, it's going to happen. This is the world. But creating that safe space in your harbor home, knowing always that the wild ocean, which off the coast of North Carolina is called the graveyard of the Atlantic, it's dangerous, turbulent waters. But in Ocracoke Harbor, there is a safe, calm port that allows everyone to thrive. And so that metaphor is carried throughout the book, and I think it's relatable. I think people can follow it. It's, I think, a work where most everyone will see themselves. And it doesn't matter what your culture is, what language you speak in your home, what your nation of origin is. Every human on the earth wants a harbor home for their children.
Well, I think you've really put your finger on that nerve of parents want some peace.
Yes.
And so I can see why parents are going to be thinking, I want to get a hold of this. Can you share with us a few of the big takeaways or the important things from the book about how to create that peaceful place?
Of course. We start with a cove. Now, without a cove, there is no harbor, all right? So not every cove is a harbor, but every harbor has a cove. It's one of those mathematical kind of things. And so a cove I describe as the space in which you and your family are intimate. It's just you,
okay,
however many of you that is. And we talk about being close in proximity, being in the same room at the same time. How often in your home are you scattered to the four winds? So we talk about deliberately bringing the family in together, not just for meal times, but for positive reinforcement. Very specifically, and this is the cry of my heart, and I think homeschoolers do this really well, is to read aloud to your child every day. Bring them into that very intimate space of your body. I talk in the book about holding a beach ball, at shoulder level, and drawing your child into that place, that is the cove of your body. So you start there. That's your personal space, is what you can control. And then enlarging the cove and making sure that everyone has a place within it, that you speak to one another. We talk about creating a cove using your words. I taught my children as we were growing up, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will break my heart. So we're very careful with words. Create a cove with your words, with your time. So there's that. The next element is faith. I believe that having a faith foundation in your home is crucial to creating a harbor home. And that is compared to the deep water that is part of every harbor, every safe natural harbor. The commonality is that the water is very deep and that keeps it stable and calm. So we discuss how do you get children to engage in their own faith, not just following behind you, but reaching a point where they can be faithful followers of their own on their own accord. So then we have the inlet of a harbor, which is the place in a harbor where the connection between the ocean and the harbor itself.
Okay.
Who do you let into your home? Mm-hmm. Who comes in through your inlet? On Ocracoke Island during the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries, it was a harbor for pirates, not good people.
Okay.
Not good people. So being careful about not letting the pirates in.
Right.
And so we discuss ways of doing that. And just so there's a lot of takeaways. I think every chapter would stand on its own with its own takeaway. And then, of course, dealing with the storms.
So let's dig in a little bit on that faith item and giving our audience today some takeaways. You know, how can these parents help their children grow in faith, own their own faith? Just what you've been talking about, that depth.
What we say as Methodists is that the world is our parish. And so I believe that we teach our children and lead our children to have a faith by not making it a pigeonholed item that we save for our bedtime prayers or our mealtime prayers or Sunday worship, that it is encompassed into every aspect of our lives. So science is always, in our homeschool, science always reached back to God. History always reached back to God. Even math, because only God could create the perfection that is arithmetic. 2 plus 2 is always going to be 4. Where else can that come from but a perfect God? So we encourage families to not pigeonhole their faith and to make it such a natural part of your everyday conversation that it's never stilted, it's never forced or fake. It's just who you are at the core of your being, and you transfer that through love and kindness and storytelling to their children. But I do want to kind of caution parents about telling the story of Jesus the same way you would tell the story of Napoleon at Waterloo. This is a fact. This is not a once upon a time Little Red Riding Hood kind of storyline, which is, I think, where we make a lot of mistakes in teaching our children our faith. We talk about it the same way we talk about fairy tales. No, this is a fact. This is the truth. So those are my big passionate items about training children in the faith. Keep it real.
And if we talk about what it would mean to truly follow Christ, it means that it encompasses our whole lives.
Of course. We can't.
If we have a version of faith that is, it's only at this time or this time or this time, then we didn't quite get it yet.
I didn't want to say that. I'm glad you did.
And it goes back to what you just mentioned, and this is just a great encouragement to parents, and that is the kind of faith that we're going to be passing on to kids is the faith that we have.
Right.
And so if it's that genuine, personal, this is my life, and it flows naturally, that's most powerful, right?
I love that. I love that.
And part of that is working on the barnacles too. So the barnacles is something, and the harbor police, something of that.
Chapter next, the barnacles.
What is that? What is that? Tell us about the no more yelling. You've got some of those things in your book.
Yes.
And working on the barnacles.
Yeah.
So give us that.
Alternatives to yelling is a big part of one of the things that I tell people, particularly, and very young children are my area of specialty. But one of the things I teach parents to do is go the opposite way. If your child is yelling, then you speak more quietly. If he continues to yell, you get even quieter until you are communicating in a whisper. Until you have your child deep inside your cove and you are whispering. And so the alternative to yelling is to not yell.
Right.
It's to not respond.
Increasingly.
Yes. Well, it's amazing to me how easy it is to let a situation escalate when the parent's role is to de-escalate, to ratchet back these conflicts. You can do it. You're in charge. You're the grown-up. You're the parent.
Right.
That means you are the captain of the ship. And that means your word is law. Your law is generous, kind, and loving. but it is to be
But it does
complied
exist.
with.
That's
But it
right.
does exist, and you just communicate that calmly because there's no arguments to be had. You don't have to think about what happens when a police officer stops a speeding motorist. That police officer walks up to the speeding motorists and asks calmly a series of questions, and he's not standing there yelling at you. He's not, because all you've done is break a rule. He writes you your ticket. You get the ticket.
It's not
and
personal.
It's not personal. That is my
He's
entire...
not angry. That's
He's
right.
not. He's not angry. And that's what I continually tell parents. This tantruming behavior, this chaotic behavior, even this disobedience is not personal. They're growing. They're learning. There's a learning curve to becoming an adult. So we have to steer that
Right.
with authority that is calm. It's the most effective way.
That's great. And I've found myself, all of a sudden, I'm in an argument with a 10-year-old, and I'm losing. And I'm thinking, what's going on here?
What is wrong with
And I
this?
forgot that I'm the parent,
Right.
And so this is wonderful to realize we have the responsibility
Yes.
and the ability
Right.
to de-escalate,
Right.
to be calm, to
Right.
set the tone.
Right.
And so I hope you guys will check this out. Is it out now or it's coming?
It is to be released in print on May 24th. So
Okay, it'll be out
yes,
May 24th.
very soon.
This is available, and
wherever books are sold.
wherever books are sold. Harbor Home, create a home where you and your children can thrive. Teresa, we're so glad that you could join us.
Thank you.
It's good. Well, let's get to the news here. As a homeschooler, you're always wondering, well, I wonder how many other people are homeschooling. Well, in the news, on Sunday, May 15th, the Morning Newswire podcast presented a special episode on the growth of homeschooling in the United States. Now, this is based on 18 states that share their data through the current school year. And here's the most recent numbers out of these 18 states. It is increased 63% in 20 to 21, and it fell only by 17% in the 21 to 22 school year. So a year ago, it jumped up 63%, and then only carving back about 17 of that. So the numbers are really up when
That's
it comes to homeschooling. And you probably see that through all of your dealings with all the people
That's
across
right.
the state, don't you?
Yeah, and this was an important finding that we have already reported here from the Associated Press and some of the data they've gathered from the states. In this particular news item from Morning Wire, they gave even more interesting information that we haven't heard yet. So this is brand new stuff right here. Because here's the state. Which states saw the greatest increase proportionately from 2020 to 2021 school year? Which states? All right. Number one, Massachusetts, and number two, New York. So Massachusetts went from 1.5%, which is only New York has a lower one, 1.2. These are the two lowest homeschool populations. But in Massachusetts, it went from 1.5 to 12.1.
Wow.
In New York, it went from 1.2 to 10.1.
Wow.
We also have Alaska. Went from 9.6, which isn't bad, to 27%.
Wow. Wow.
Florida, from 5% to 18.1%. Vermont, 4.1%, pretty low, to 16.9%.
Wow.
And there are only two states, Iowa and Kentucky, that actually had a decrease, and it was just minute. They're pretty much the same. So a lot of growth in particular states here. And we're going to talk about the implication of which states grew and why here in just a second. So we also have another question. Which states have the highest rates of homeschooling proportionately to their school population? And so Alaska has the most with 28%, Oklahoma with 20%, Montana, Florida have 18%, Vermont, West Virginia, and Georgia have 16%.
Wow.
Now, North Carolina has about 12%. That's what we estimate. North Carolinians for Home Education estimates about 12% of the K through 12 population is homeschooled. So, why did this happen? Homeschool is already growing,
Yeah.
but there were a bunch of parents who weren't sure They were interested. They were curious. They were already frustrated.
Yeah.
They already were kind of had it up to here, but not quite up to here.
Mm-hmm.
And COVID did it. It just pushed them all over, huge amounts of people. And what we're seeing from that first statistic is once they got in, they go,
Hey, wait
this
a
is
minute.
good stuff.
This is doable.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
And it took something to push them over the line. And it's only going to increase. The momentum is just going to continue to increase.
What are some of the responses, Matt? You know, you deal with parents all the time that are just coming into homeschooling. Now you see them in there. They've been doing it for 6 months. Maybe it's their first year. What are some of the big takeaways for you on the response after they've started? Is it, oh my goodness, this is so much easier. I had no idea there were so many people. Or, wow, the curriculum is... What are some of those feedback that you get?
You know, I think the biggest and the one that I like the most, which really goes back to our conversation with Teresa, is that the relationships and the tone of the home changes. Because they have more time together. Mm-hmm. There's more security. They're not going away learning things that the parents have to clean up. They're not going away feeling threatened or bullied or exposed to things they're not. It's just like there's a level of unity and the relationships are stronger. I think parents are still going, man, this is difficult. You know, I'm trying to figure out how to do this, but I do enjoy it. Yeah. But the relationship thing and the tone of the home is a big change. So one of the things to look at here is that it's true that if you look at the growth of the states, it is happening more in red states or conservative states, which makes sense because they're the ones complaining most of all about the values and those kinds of changes. But the greatest increase was in Massachusetts and New York. Yeah. And that's even in the city. And really there are a lot of academic reasons primarily and COVID reasons. So the overall demographic is definitely changing. And there are a lot more people who aren't doing it for values, aren't doing it for faith, but they're doing it for a lot of other reasons. But with our time less, we're going to hit this documentary here.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Yeah. The families across the nation are experiencing the Homeschool Awakening, taking advantage of the freedom and opportunities of self-discovery with the world as their classroom, is their moniker, as anywhere we go as a classroom. And you can join the award-winning actor Kirk Cameron. Everybody knows him, pretty well known in our communities, as he dives into the adventure of dynamic American families on a mission to put fun and faith back into learning. The Homeschool Awakening explores the ins and outs and honest answers to homeschooling's most frequently asked questions. Let's check out this trailer.
We have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
I don't really understand this idea that parents should decide what's being taught.
Give me a break.
I always viewed homeschooling as somewhat of a cult.
Quiet, reclusive.
The different people.
Abnormal in some way.
I could never picture myself doing it.
Oh no, those are weird. I'm not doing that.
That was before we had kids. And then we had kids, and
all of a sudden, time for school, and is this really what I should be doing? Dropping them off somewhere else.
And the teacher said to me, he would not cheat off of you because you are too stupid for him to cheat off of you. My kid is not going to have that experience.
We didn't have to be a special needs teacher. We only had to be a teacher of our daughter.
The kingdom of heaven is qualifying you to speak into your children's life.
I'm responsible for what we're putting into their head and into their heart.
It changed everything.
I think as a kid, you just want to feel like you're worth it. And homeschooling says you're worth it.
The freedom we had was so worth the small sacrifice it was to teach the kids. Now, 12 years later, I realize it wasn't a sacrifice, it was a total gift.
You are in control. You get to choose curriculum. You get to choose methodology.
It's yours to shape.
You are the perfect person to teach them because you've been teaching your child since day one.
She made sure I had everything I needed. I love her so much.
No one's going to love our children more than we do.
The greatest gift that I was given was my own identity. My parents gave me that.
Go in with an adventurous spirit.
Break the mold. It's really beautiful outside the box.
It's such a great adventure.
Isn't homeschooling like public school at home? Ah! Not even close.
All right, we hope you guys will check that out. We're so glad you joined us today. I hope you've been encouraged and challenged. We'd love to hear from you. If you have questions or comments, you can go to the Homeschool Show at nche.com. We'd love for you to share this with your friends so they can also find it and rate the show on your podcast platforms. And until next week, continue to homeschool with confidence and joy.